All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Mark here again. So the topic I want to discuss today is how is Kevin Durant's legacy affected by him being bounced out in the first round in a sweep by the Boston Celtics? How does that affect his all-time legacy, and should he be considered a top 10 player all-time? So, of course, everybody that's been following NBA basketball this year saw what happened in the first round of the playoffs when the Brooklyn Nets squared off against Boston. And a lot of people might have been shocked by that they got swept like that. And, of course, it was very noticeable that KD played well below his standards. So, at this point in time, you know, how should we evaluate KD all time as a player? Me personally, just my honest opinion, I think when you've been a great player for a long stretch of time, like KD has, I mean, let's think about it. KD came in the league in 2007. It's now 2022. So he's been in the league for 15 years now. And if you look up his stats for his career, he averages 27 points per game on 49.5% shooting, around 7 rebounds, 4 assists, is a very consistent three-point shooter, shooting 38% overall, and also one of the better free throw shooters in NBA history, shooting around 88%. So that's what he's done over the course of his career. So I think when you've done that for that stretch of time, a loss like this in the playoffs, even though it does look bad, to me it doesn't really change much about where he should be ranked all time as a player. After a while, when you've showed greatness for that long, I feel like eventually it's going to be a changing of the guard, and that's not what we're seeing in the NBA with the Jason Tatums, the Devin Bookers, Luka Doncic, all the dominant big man, Giannis, Jokic, and Embiid. We're seeing some of the newer players starting to shine and take over. So out with the old, in with the new, as they say. So KD getting swept, it's not like he's the only superstar in NBA history that's been swept. Every superstar in NBA history has been swept. Every single one of them. So sometimes you run into a team that's just better than you and your team, and they handle their business. So I think KD at this point, he's not going to move up anymore. He had a chance to maybe move up if he would have won another championship. I'm not sure if he's ever going to be able to do that, but to me, I can't really see him moving down. Without question, KD is a top 20 all-time player, and a lot of people will probably put him in the top 15. But would I put KD in the top 10, in my opinion? No. When we look at some of the all-time great players in NBA history, all the different superstars from each era and the things they accomplished, what they were able to do to impact their team, how they led their team, things of that nature. Yes, I do agree that KD as a raw talent, being 7 feet tall, with that type of wingspan to go along with his handle, his shot creativity, things like that, as a scorer, yes, he's a top 10 all-time talent, no doubt about it. But is he a top 10 all-time great player? Is he a true champion in the NBA? Can you put him in the same caliber as somebody like a Larry Bird or Magic Johnson in the 80s, who came to their teams and built a legacy with the franchise they were drafted by and helped build their teams up year in and year out to keep them competitive year in and year out to give them a chance to win championships? Is he on that level? Is he on the Michael Jordan level in the 90s, how he was able to come to the Chicago Bulls and help build them up year in and year out and eventually help lead them to championships in the 90s? Can you put him on the same level as somebody like a Tim Duncan, who came to a Spurs franchise who had no winning history in regards to just winning a championship? Not saying they had no other good seasons where they won a lot of games, but they never were able to get over the hump. And then by the time his career is over, he's a 5-time champion. Can you compare him to a Kobe Bryant or a Shaquille O'Neal based off what they were able to do together and even separately, what they brought to the table? Shaquille O'Neal is a player that was able to bring the Magic to the NBA Finals in his 3rd season in the NBA. And he was the #1 dominant player in the league and certainly on his team in the early 2000s when they were winning championships. And then when they parted ways, he goes to Miami, and then he's able to help them get a championship. And they were a 500 team before he got there, and they basically were a 500 team almost after he left. Kobe Bryant, who was able to establish his own legacy when he won those 2 championships without Shaq. LeBron James, Another all-time great player, of course, as we know, who's won 4 titles, and he did it with 3 different teams. Also a 4-time MVP award winner. Those are some players just off the top of my head that I can think of that you can't really compare KD to. To me, those are 7 players I just named right there that I would rank ahead of Kevin Durant. And not to mention going back even further when we name guys like Bill Russell, who's an 11-time champion in his era, who is a dominant player on defense and performed at his best on offense in the biggest moments when his team needed him to. Was also a coach of 2 out of those 11 championship teams while he was playing. Wilt Chamberlain, who basically holds every statistical record. Of course, people might say, oh, well, who did he go against and things like that, bro. Check this out, man. If you look up Wilt Chamberlain's highlights, you'll see that he's not just some big dude that was just dunking all the time. He had great touch. He had great fundamental. He knew how to use the bank shot. He wasn't somebody that just stood in the paint all day and could only score just right at the rim. He could do other things well as well. Not to mention he led the league in total assists one year as a center. Wilt Chamberlain did that. Won 4 MVP awards. Was a multiple-time champion. He won with 2 different teams. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, same thing. Won with 2 different teams. Won on the team he was drafted to in Milwaukee. Also helped LA win 5 titles alongside Magic Johnson. Was a 6-time regular season MVP, the most all-time. Won 2 finals MVPs as well. All these players I mentioned thus far, in their eras that they dominated in, they stood out more than Kevin Durant has done in his era. Every player I just mentioned thus far, at a certain point in time during the time period they played, they were undisputably the best player in the league. Whether it be for the entire era or decade that they dominated in, or for maybe half of that time, but there were certain points in their career, whether it be Jordan, Kareem, LeBron, Magic, Bird, Wilt, Bill Russell, Shaq, Tim Duncan, Kobe. They all had moments in time where they were viewed as the best player in their era. All these players I mentioned either won a championship with the team they were drafted by and it was organic, and or won multiple championships with different teams. Kevin Durant has not done either one of those things. All right. His championships that he won in Golden State, most people will view them with the asterisk next to it in comparison to the other players I just mentioned and the championships that they won. It was more legitimate, it was more organic, and it justifies their overall greatness. The one thing Kevin Durant has left to do is to try to win a championship with a team, with him being the undisputable lead player on the team. And he has yet to do that so far. And like I said earlier in the video, it seems to be a changing of the guard in the NBA. So I'm not sure if he's going to have any more time to do that. Just being honest. So, and that's not to mention some other players that you can certainly debate, like Dr. J, Moses Malone, Isaiah Thomas, Oscar Robertson, guys like that, even Jerry West. I've done a video on all these players I just mentioned thus far in this video. Other than Wilt Chamberlain, I've done a video on all of them to break down their greatness and what they brought to the table. So, once again, do I think that KD should be knocked down at all? Wherever you have him ranked at, I think he should just stay where he's at. Every era, there is a changing of the guard. Like I said, out with the old, in with the new. The great players from the past generation, they start to fade off. And the young up-and-coming players, they start to shine. So it's a great thing to be watching NBA basketball right now. It's in great hands for sure. Shout out to KD for how he's performed throughout his career. He's a legitimate superstar. But I don't think he can move up any further on the list of all-time great players. He's somewhere in that top 15 to top 20 range for me. And but like I said, I don't think that his legacy should take a shot. But I just think it's kind of the end of that era, that LeBron, KD era, with them being the 2 top players in the league. I think it's starting to change up. It's a great thing. But anyways, though, follow me on Instagram at trademark with 5 underscores. And, of course, we go live every week, sometimes multiple times throughout the week. It's normally on Friday, but with all these playoff games going on, we try to hop on as much as possible. Make Your Mark Sports Podcast. Stay tuned. There's more videos to come. I love and I appreciate everybody that's been supporting my channel thus far. All glory be to God. Thank you again.